Hi guys, welcome to Thoughts from a Bookworm, a YouTube channel I created for the purpose of talking about, reviewing, and recommending books. I hope y'all all had a great January. First of all, I'm always into reading, but I noticed this January I read more than I usually do. I normally read about 2 to 3 books a month, but this month I read 5, which I know for other people that may not be a lot, but for me it was. Really dedicated a lot of time this month to reading. So I wanted to talk to y'all about the books that I read in January, and I wanted to give y'all my ratings of them and if I would recommend them to y'all. So the first book that I read in January was Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I got this book for Christmas and I was so excited to read it. It moved up to number 1 on my to be read list as soon as I got it. If y'all have watched any of my videos, y'all probably already heard about how much I love Sally Rooney. I love the philosophical questions she puts in her novels. I also love how realistic her tone is and how realistic her characters and the journeys they go on are. And I think that's why they're so emotionally relatable to a lot of her readers. This book is about 2 young women who have been friends for a while. One of them is a famous novelist. One of them works at a publisher's office, I believe. Yes, I think that's what she called it. I think it's for a literary magazine or just a magazine overall. The 2 best friends, Alice and Eileen, it's told from both of their perspectives throughout the book. Alice's side of the story focuses on her being a famous novelist, dealing with psychiatric problems, and also her relationship with a guy she meets named Felix. Eileen's side of the novel is about not only feels about her job and how she feels about getting older, but also about a relationship with her childhood neighbor who she had a crush on when she was younger, but he was older than her. His name is Simon. It also follows her relationship with Simon, and the 2 women communicate with each other via email. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's a very realistic book and it was very easy for me to emotionally connect to it. So I hope that if you read it, you also emotionally connect to it. 100% recommend this book if you don't want a book that's very heavy in plot, but instead very heavy on emotions and personal journeys. Like that's Sally Rooney's strength. It's my second favorite out of Sally Rooney's 3 novels. Ranking of Sally Rooney novels goes Normal People, obviously, Beautiful World, Where Are You, and then Conversations with Friends. Again, I loved all of them, but this won second place to Normal People. The next book that I read in January was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This book is one of the most popular books on Book Talk and Bookstagram, so I know I'm late to this party by about a year, but I completely understand all of the hype. The book follows a young journalist when she's given the chance to interview a legendary Hollywood star, Evelyn Hugo. Evelyn Hugo is known for having had 7 husbands throughout her life. And basically, Evelyn decides to give a full account of her life, no secrets held, the full truth, to this journalist. The book is formatted in sections dedicated to like each husband. It's very easy to get through because of the way it's formatted and the way that it's divided by husband. And also what I thought was really interesting is that Reed put newspaper clippings throughout the entire book to show not only Evelyn's point of view of what happened, but also how the media interpreted her actions and what happened throughout her life. So again, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Really easy to get through. I would suggest this book to people who don't even like to read. Not only was it a really quick read and Taylor Jenkins Reid told it in a very creative way, just so interesting to read a story about a woman who is perceived as this way for decades and decades and decades, and to hear her side of the story. Even though it's fictional, you still feel like truth is being revealed to you as a reader. I totally understand the hype, and again, 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in January was Cultish by Amanda Montell. As I've already spoken about on this channel, I am not really into nonfiction books, but I was so drawn to this and I immediately wanted to read it. The book's main focus is on the language of cults and a specific language that cult leaders and cult recruiters use, get people interested in cults, get people believing in the messages cults are sending out, and keep people invested in cults. There's a variety of groups she talks about in the book, not saying that all the groups she talks about she labels as cults. She just talks about the behavior of these groups that are cultish. So some of the famous groups that she's talked about that our society has determined was an actual cult is Jonestown and Heaven's Gate. Other groups that she talks about that display cultish behavior are MLMs and specific workout groups such as SoulCycle. So if you read this book, you'll learn about the language of cultish groups, learn about the people that join cultish groups. She dismantles a lot of stereotypes of victims and followers of cult and cultist groups. It's just overall extremely fascinating. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which, I mean, the fact that I even finished a nonfiction book is impressive in my opinion, because there have been plenty of nonfiction books that I've given up on halfway through. It's just human nature to be interested in cults, I feel like. The next book that I read in January was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I mean, I loved The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. As soon as I finished that, I knew that my next fiction read would be another one of her books, so I read Daisy Jones and the Six. I gave this book overall 3 out of 5 stars. It's just, I felt like it took a little bit longer than I expected to kind of get into it. Of course, it's about Daisy Jones and how she became a groupie at a very young age. It takes you on like the formation of Daisy Jones and the Six. Also tells the reader how they created this legendary album in the 70s. And the book is not written in traditional novel form. It's written like an interview in a way. It's not like there's just one narrator taking you through the entire thing. You hear from almost everyone's perspective who was involved with Daisy Jones and the Six. And one of my favorite things about the book is that Reid took the fictional album and wrote out all the lyrics for all the songs. So at the end of the book, you can read all the songs that were on this fictional legendary album, which I thought was super cool. I would highly recommend this book if you're a musician, because it talks a lot about the process of making an album and the ups and downs of being a musician. But also, I would recommend this book to anyone that's just seeking to read a novel that's not told in traditional form. This book was just such a creative way to tell the story, between the way she set up the narration and actually writing out the lyrics to the album in the book. I mean, that's just overall, I think that's just so creative and such an interesting way to tell this story. And the last book that I finished in January was Go Ask Alice. Now, this has been on my to be read list for a very long time. I'm happy that I finally read it. It's anonymous, you don't know who actually wrote the book. The book is basically a real life journal of a teenage girl who is a drug addict who is served LSD without her permission at a party, and her life becomes ruled by drugs. It shows the reader a true story of how a teenager's life was completely turned upside down. Her entire direction of life was shifted because of this party game. It's very dark. It takes you on a real account of a teenage drug addict and the ups and downs of that. It's very disturbing, not just because of the contents of the book, but because as you're reading it, you realize that it's real. This is a real diary of a teenage girl whose life was forever altered. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. It's very disturbing, but it keeps you reading. Yeah, so if you're into short, more disturbing books, I mean, this needs to go to the top of your to be read list. That was it for my video on the books that I read in January. I just wanted to tell y'all that I do have an Instagram for this YouTube page. It's the same as the channel name. It's at Thoughts from a Bookworm. And I post a lot about the books I'm currently reading, and I post a lot of book reviews and book recommendations on there as well. See y'all in the next video.